Last week, if you were not here with us, we kicked off our sermon series, The Walking Dead. And we established last week that it didn't matter if you were one of the 12.3 million people who watched the show. If you're not, the mid-season premiere comes on tonight, and they're expecting even more people than the 12.3 million people that will tune in tonight to watch it. If you are a fan of the show, I know you will be watching it. If you're not, and there's nothing else on, tune in to see. I'm not plugging the show, but tune in to see what maybe what I'm speaking on is portrayed in the series. But regardless whether you watch the series or not, we agree that walkers or the walking dead are around us at all times. I mean, we said that we may even be a walker ourselves. We may even be asleep and going through life and not even know it. And in reality, the walking dead are those individuals who just sort of sleepwalk through life. I mean, there's no emotion. They're just kind of going from day to day, from season to season, from year to year. And they're just doing the bare minimum of surviving. And we all know walkers, that they're everywhere. I mean, they're in our relationships. They're in our family. And they're even in our faith family as well. And so my hope and my prayer is that we kind of wake up some of those walkers around us. And if we are a walker ourselves, that we become more aware of life that's going on around us. In the television series, the walkers or zombies, if you want to call them, are very easily eliminated. As you find out the people that are not infected with the zombie disease are really the real threat. And the show also displays what personal and moral ethics will we hang on to or discard, what will we compromise about ourselves in order to just survive. But in like real life, the walkers can be easily eliminated, but what are left when they are the bones. I mean, skeletons are the only remnants left. It's like in real life as well when you think about it. I mean, when we die, the only thing left, the only thing that cannot be decomposed, the only reflection of our human existence is our bones. And when we look at a skeleton or a group of bones, all we can tell is that at one time, this person was alive. Bones cannot tell us if this person was rich or poor or good or bad or successful or unsuccessful. Can't tell us how many family members they had. Bones cannot tell us if they're ugly or pretty or popular or unpopular. Bones or our skeletal system is the foundation of our body. And it can only reflect our human existence after we're gone. I mean, our bones, ironically, are generic, really, and are common as everyone else, or everything else but bones, can bring about human feelings. It was early 2001. I was on a mission trip in Haiti. And if you've ever been to Haiti, or you have a chance to go to the country of Haiti, don't. I sadly and heartbrokenly say that there's really nothing safe or nothing beautiful about Haiti, except this kind of incredible hope and spirit of its people. And on this particular hot day, we had driven for hours out of the city of Port-au-Prince into the countryside. We spent our morning meeting with local pastors, some who walked days to just meet with us. We then moved on and worked in a school and helped put a roof on a school. We then traveled over and had dinner, and then we were on our way back. And as we were crowded in the van, we began to notice that the sun had just began to set on the horizon. And the only place on this earth you don't want to be is in Haiti when it's dark. And while we were rushing back, the host and our driver pulls over to the side of the road and stops. They order us out of the van. And we stood on the side of the road and we began to look over this field as the sun began to set. And no one really knew what to say. No one really knew what to do. And we sat there in silence as no one dared to even speak. As we kept watching the sun, thinking we can't be out here after dark. Then our local escort said, "Welcome to Titania, man." Titania is known as the killing fields. It was the place where soldiers and rebels and political leaders and anyone who tried to bring a coup against the government was brought out in this field and were killed and executed. He began to tell us how some were shot out of helicopters and just pushed, and some were just marched out there and shot. And as we stood there speechless, the sun began to set, and if you looked on the horizon, you could see we were standing literally in a valley of bones. Skulls, skeletons, some intact, some not intact, some still new, some very old. And the juxtapose of this beautiful sunset over this valley of bones and the feeling that rushed over my body is one that I will never forget. It was one of those sober moments in my life that I will never forget, that changed me forever as I stood in a valley of bones. The prophet Ezekiel had that same experience. The prophet Ezekiel, if you don't know, in my opinion, my humble opinion, my semi-educated opinion, if you read and learn about Ezekiel, Ezekiel was the strangest, weirdest, craziest prophet there was in the Old Testament. I mean, if prophets, if you remember, were God's communicators to the people. And God would give these prophets messages with either in dreams or vision or experiences or voices. And the prophet would relay that to the people. And the prophet Ezekiel found himself one day in a valley full of bones. And I can imagine what he felt. It's that same feeling I felt that day in Titania. If you will turn to me to the 32nd chapter of the book of the prophet Ezekiel, beginning with the first verse. Either join us on the screen in your Bible or in the back of your bulletin. Ezekiel says, "The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And God asked me, 'Son of man, can these bones live?' And I said, 'Sovereign Lord, you alone know.'" Ezekiel found himself walking among a valley of bones. Dead, dried up, dusty bones. Bones that didn't seem to be alive. He began to speak to the bones, and the bones didn't seem to be listening. And again, I won't bust anyone out this morning, but I know that feeling sometimes. But for Ezekiel, his people had been enslaved for over 430 years. You see, God had brought them out of slavery. God had given them a king when they had asked for, and God had brought them to the promised land. But then they began to worship the blessings of God more than the blessor. morning from going back home and visiting with my mom. And as I did, driving and being there, I began to think back as I was in my childhood home and seeing all my trophies and stuff just there. I began to think back of all the things my parents did for me growing up. The list is endless. I began to think about them sacrificing and paying for my education and my college and supporting me in my sports and coming to my games. And then I remembered how they took me kicking and screaming every Sunday morning to church. And I began to think, I was so blessed. I was so blessed. But I didn't realize that until I grew more and I began to mature. And granted, I so appreciated and I acknowledged all the things they did for me. But I realized that just made me what I am. It was all the other stuff that made me who I am. And I forgot that for so long to be thankful for the blessor, my parents, and that they were in my life. And so why is Ezekiel preaching to these bones? Have you ever thought about that? And why is he in this valley of these bones in the first place? What we need to understand is Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. And he came and he conquered all the Jews. And he took them off away from Israel, back to Babylon to be his slaves and to build things for him. And here's where we find Ezekiel. He's preaching to the bones of his people who were slaughtered and killed by King Nebuchadnezzar. And the few people that were left were saying, look, it's game over. There's nothing left. We have lost our freedom. We've lost our land. We've lost our nation. We've lost our ancestors. We've lost our family members. And all that is left is a valley full of bones as a reflection, a sad reflection of our existence. They were saying, look, we messed it all up. We messed up our relationship with God. And all things that's left are these bones. God brings Ezekiel to this valley of bones. And I can imagine him saying, God, why are we here? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? These are bones. These people are dead and gone. This is a bunch of useless skeletons. They are no good to us or our people. And God tells Ezekiel to begin to walk through these bones. He tells him to begin to talk and communicate and prophesy and give hope to these bones. As if he was speaking to the whole nation of people. So why? Why? Because God is a God who can bring life to the death, from death. God sees the impossible while we only see the impossible. And we've all felt dead at some point in our life. We have all had reasons where life just seemed to be so hopeless. We have all, at some point in our life, have felt totally defeated. But God can take something that is absolutely dead and turn it into something absolutely amazing. And Ezekiel stands where we have all stood and asked that important question. And he's asked this question, can these bones live? Can these bones be useful again? Can my life be useful again? And Ezekiel says, God, only you know. God, only you have the power to restore these bones. God, only you can turn those scattered, lifeless mess of our lives into something great again. Only you. And that is the good news. That God can bring something back to life when nothing else can. God can bring back to life a dead relationship. God can bring back to life a bad decision we've made. God can bring back to life a scattered mess that we've made of our lives. And we know this why? Because just as Ezekiel stood there that day, we can turn on the news today and see those bones of the nation of Israel. Did you hear that? Why do we know? sword that is still fighting to be revived, that is still fighting for its own prosperity and its own protection. And if God can make a nation out of a bunch of scattered bones that's still thriving today, imagine what He can do in your life as well. Only God knows. Will you pray with me?